throw the chest a little bit to our right. And so the upper arm would be, and I'm going to go ahead and divide this in half here, the head, because that's gonna make up part of what we think of as measuring the proportions for the rest of the body. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So when you do the upper arm, one way you can think of it proportionally is that the upper arm is a length and a half of that person's head's height. Okay? And then the lower arm is the length of the height of the head. If you take your lower arm and kind of line your elbow up with your chin, I'm doing it in the mirror here, you'll probably notice that from elbow to wrist, mine's a little bit longer, but that the lower arm is the same length as the height of the head here. And so basically I've worked out the proportions for the arm here, and I won't really get into developing the overall shape of the arm too much until some later tutorials, when I'm going to I want to just get you started with drawing, your real rudimentary figures, and then we can go back and start to flesh them out. But I just think it's very, for me, it's been very important to be able to get, the framework looking very natural as far as the pose. And just kind of throw some little cubized shapes here for the hands. And so those are the proportions for the arms here. Now, as you can see here, so this is this is the length of the lower arm. Now, okay, I just happened to make it the same length, but if I wanted to start to throw this into 3D space, I could make it a lot shorter, and basically what I'm doing is drawing the arm reaching towards us. The best way, if you'd like to help out my efforts, best thing you could do is to put a link on your blog or email it to a friend. Let people know about my tutorials, let people know about my animation, and I'd greatly appreciate it. And it fuels the fire. The more that happens, the more I'll put all these tutorials up on the net and keep doing it for a long time. And I'll talk more about arcs and deep space and that kind of thing later on. And so then let's go ahead and talk about the legs here. I kind of take two approaches. Sometimes I like to start out thinking that the legs are basically from top of ankle to anchor point at hip, half and half, and I'll just divide them in half. Also a proportion that I've heard about is that the upper leg is 2 heads high, and the upper leg is 2 heads high, and the lower leg is a head and a half high. So the lower leg is the same length as the upper arm, and the upper leg is 2 heads high. And this is all a slight difference in where you decide the anchor point is going to be. When most of the time when I'm drawing legs and arms, they're somewhat to one, they're at least a little bit in deep space, so the measurements to measure accurately at that point would, you'd really need to go ahead and put up a lot of perspective forms on there to make it accurate. And at that point, I feel as an artist developing a sense of the form and space is the ultimate best thing I can do. And because it's kind of like, it gets to a point where it's like, well, you know, if for some things that you want to do, why not just use a camera, or why not just use a 3D program? You know, there's, you know, it really depends on you know, my art is for anyway. I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but and you might notice that I'm using a compass here. This is really a wonderful tool. My personal stylistic rule is that one of my rules, just for myself, is that I don't use a ruler and I don't use a compass to draw circles. You might see that I took the lead out and put a nail in there just because I'm only using it for measurement, because I just, as far as getting into the groove of drawing my own circles is definitely a way where I get, you know, deep into that world of, you know, being intuitive about the way the form looks, instead of, like, you know, trying to you know, go about it in terms of geometry and all that kind of stuff.